Good afternoon and welcome to Developing an Entrepreneurial Mindset. My name is Zabby Gunn and I am Director of the Center for Career Engagement and Internships here at Queens College. This event is co-sponsored by Blackstone Launchpad. It's also co-sponsored by Queens College SEEK and Queens College Student Association. I am delighted to have Richard Celestin, who is a Queens College alumnus, here to present this evening. It's going to be a two-part presentation, so this is the first session, and it's really amazing, Richard's background. He is an attorney, he is an entrepreneur, a published author, and also a Queens College professor. So he is the ideal person to talk to you about having that entrepreneurial mindset that you can take with you in any industry. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Richard Celestin.
Thank you guys very much. So good afternoon, everyone. I really do appreciate everybody being here. I appreciate everybody logging in on Zoom and participating in this event. I am super excited to be presenting to you guys today. I have a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge that I am definitely looking forward to sharing with you guys and also answering any questions that you guys may have about anything discussed or maybe even anything I did not discuss. I do want to stress once again that this is in fact a two-part event. The goal today is to tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about my journey, and then start talking about some of those really key characteristics to becoming an entrepreneur. And the second part, which is going to be on April 27th at 5 o'clock in the Dome, is when we're going to continue the conversation about those important characteristics and really start to focus on what are the really important and essential skills that are necessary in order to become a successful entrepreneur. So it's definitely important to attend both parts if you want to get a full picture of everything involving all this information that we're going to be sharing with you guys today. So as was mentioned, first and foremost, let me tell you a little bit about myself. So one of the more interesting questions that I can get asked is, well, hey, so what do you do, right? Because that usually involves a very long answer. And as you can see, there's a lot of stuff that I like to do. My main profession that I went to school the longest for is, and I am an attorney. My specialty, what I focus on is criminal defense law. I practice primarily in the 5 boroughs, but also in Long Island as well. In addition to that, I am an entrepreneur. I own an educational consulting business and basically have served as a vendor with the Department of Education for about 13 years now, servicing K-12 schools throughout New York City and Long Island. And I can say as of last month, now I am servicing schools in New Jersey, which is pretty cool. In addition to that, as was mentioned, I'm a college professor. I teach here at Queens College and taught previously at LaGuardia Community College, John Jay, and City Tech. So I'm very much a CUNY supporter, all about CUNY. I am a published author. I'm a best-selling Amazon author for several books that I have self-published, as well as been a contributing author in another book. I do a lot of motivational speaking engagements to students, to parents on a lot of different topics. And obviously, I am a graduate of Queens College, which is what makes coming back here and presenting and teaching here is such an insane honor for me. So it's pretty cool. So obviously, we're here to talk about being an entrepreneur. And I think that one of the best ways to kind of start talking about what it takes to become an entrepreneur is to kind of share my story, right? I did not put together this slide or have this information that I'm sharing with you guys because I read in a book somewhere what it takes to become an entrepreneur. Everything that I'm going to share with you guys is stuff that I put into practice on a daily basis and what I have been doing for a very long time leading into this point. Now, when we talk about my journey, right, and how it all started, I wish that I had a story that involved, you know, a beautiful bright light presenting from, let's see, oh, it's not working. There we go. So I wish I had a story about standing in the middle of the road and all of a sudden the skies opened up and a bright light fell on me and I felt this overwhelming warm sensation that says, you are meant to be an entrepreneur. Go forth an entrepreneur, right? I wish I could tell you a story like that, right? I wish I could tell you that it was just like divine intervention, that I was born an entrepreneur. Like I knew from the day that I was born that this is what I ultimately wanted to do. In reality, that's not the case. I never intended and never planned on becoming an entrepreneur. No one in my family, up until I decided to make the decision, was an entrepreneur. So this was a very new thing to me. So instead of sitting down and thinking that this is how it started and this is some divine intervention, in reality, when I think about my journey to becoming an entrepreneur, it's a very different image. And you're like, yes, that is a bowl of spaghetti and meatballs. And you're like, okay, am I in the wrong workshop, right? So here's the reality. The reality is that one day I was sitting at home. I was employed full-time. And part of my full-time, I would spend, out of the 7 hours working, I would probably spend about 6 hours online chatting on GChat. Probably spend an hour doing actual work, and somehow was getting paid really well and doing an awesome job. So I would come home, and my celebration in coming home would be that I would sit on a couch, and I would usually eat. Usually it would be some type of pasta, and I would watch television for hours on end until it was time to go to sleep, and then it was time to repeat it the next day. And on one particular day, I was sitting at home, and I was watching television, eating a bowl of spaghetti and meatballs after working a day. And at some point, I kind of stared at this bowl of pasta, and I said to myself, is this really it? Like, did I really go to law school to sit down and just barely get by in terms of work? Like, am I satisfied with what I'm doing? Am I making an impact? Is there more that I can be doing? All of this time that I'm literally sitting down and doing nothing, can I do something else? And it was in asking myself those questions and staring. I don't know if the meatball spoke to me or whatever, but ultimately in that moment, I decided I wanted more. I wanted more for myself. I wanted to make a greater impact. I wanted more control. I didn't want to work for somebody who I felt I was smarter than. I didn't want to waste time during the day. I didn't want to waste time during the evening. And so ultimately, I decided it's now to make this change. So several decisions were made during that fateful dinner while I was watching TV. The first thing is I said to myself, I'm quitting this job, right? I'm done. I can't work this job anymore. I'm going to find a new full-time job. Second thing I said to myself was, I'm going to create my own business. But I didn't have a plan, even in that moment, to create a business that I was going to like somehow run full-time. I just wanted to do something as a side hustle to keep me busy while I worked full-time. So that way, the 9 to 5 I was working and getting paid, I would spend the 5 to 9 developing a business, developing programming. And that's ultimately what I decided to do. So the way that it worked out for me was very simple. I was taught by a mentor here at Queens College that one of the easiest ways to figure out what you want to do in life is to figure out what you love doing and find a way to make money doing it. So I said, simple. Well, I'm a lawyer. You know what lawyers love to do? Love to argue. So I'm like, how about I create a program that teaches kids the right way to argue? I was like, this is brilliant, right? Doesn't require a whole lot of brain cells, so this is perfect. So I literally sat down and I created a curriculum. This entire curriculum in terms of how to teach kids how to debate. And just to show you how little I knew about creating a business, when I first walked into a school and offered this program, they said, this is awesome. Do you have a business that this falls under for protection purposes? And I was like, a business? I thought I could just create a program and present it and that was it. And they're like, no, you got to create a business. So I had to go back. I created an LLC and then I went back to the school and I presented it. All of a sudden, the principal sits down and says, I want this program. How much? And I wasn't ready for that. So I threw out a random number and they said, done. And then I got mad because I'm like, man, if I said more, would they have said yes? And I'll never know this answer at this point, right? So it is what it is. So I basically started running my business as a side hustle. So I would work during the day. I worked in a job. I was working at the time as a program manager for the supervised release program in Queens, which is a pilot program that was an alternative to detention program. So the hours were basically from 9 in the morning until 1 in the morning, that I had staff working. So I had a lot of flexibility to take a 2-3 hour lunch, come back, because I had until 1 o'clock in the morning to make up the hours. So I would take lunch for an hour, 2 hours, and then I would go to an elementary school and I would start teaching my program. And I was also teaching at a middle school. And so this was, again, a side hustle. I ran the program out of my law school. I held my competitions out of law school. I started out with two schools in 2010. And then I was like, what's going on? All of a sudden, 2 schools turned into 10 schools. And I was like, man, this is really interesting, right? Like, this is actually have a life of its own. Like, it's not bad. I'm almost making as much money on the side as I am working full time. So this little thing that was supposed to sit in a corner and just kind of have something to play with whenever I was bored turned into something that was taking over the room. And it was in this moment I had to make one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. One of the scariest decisions I've ever had to make. But also at the same time, one of the most empowering decisions I've ever had to make. And I had to ask myself, if I'm going to sit down and invest time and energy and money in working, am I going to do it for my own brand, or am I going to do it for someone else's brand? And it was in this moment, while I was managing 10 schools and working a full-time job, that I said, you know what? I'm going to become an entrepreneur. I'm going to put all my time and energy into the business that I created, and I'm going to run with it. So I was super confident when I was sitting at home until I actually had to go in and put my 2 weeks notice. And then it got real, because that guaranteed paycheck every 2 weeks disappeared. That medical insurance that I had and I relied on was gone. Now I was like, the only way I'm going to actually be able to eat, the only way I'm going to be able to pay bills, is I got to go out and hustle and run a business, because it's my life at this point. And that's exactly what I ended up doing. 10 schools turned into 20 schools. 20 schools turned into 30 schools. Next thing I knew, I was going into schools to run my debate program, and principals were like, hey, we want you to talk to our parents. Okay, cool. Hey, we want you to run a series of workshops. Okay, cool. I had nonprofit organizations reaching out to me. Hey, you practice law and you also work with kids. We work with at-risk youth. Why don't you come and do this? Okay, cool. I realized at this point, I was starting to love this whole entrepreneurial stuff, right? I got to say yes when I wanted to, no when I didn't want to. I thought it was awesome. But at the same time, it was a tremendous amount of work. I was putting in more hours running my business than I was when I was working full time. But I enjoyed it because it was for me. It wasn't for anyone else. Now you fast forward, I'm in a position now, I've worked with, over the course of the since 2009, I've worked with 70 schools all throughout New York City, in Long Island, in New Jersey. I run workshops, I run programs, I do parent workshops, I do professional development for teachers. I'm highly sought after in schools. I literally, and I'm not even making this up, an hour before I came here, I got a random email from a school that says, hey, listen, we ran out of things to spend money on. We got a bunch of money. We heard you're fantastic. You want money? I was like, let me think about that. Sure, why not, right? So now I'm going to be doing a series of workshops for this other school. Over the course of several years, I've had the distinct pleasure of working with so many different organizations and nonprofits and Queens Public Library and different colleges and different law schools throughout this entire process. And I sit back and I look back at that fateful night when I was eating that bowl of spaghetti and meatballs. And I asked myself, did I make the right decision? And there were a lot of times I wanted to quit. There were a lot of times I asked myself, what am I doing? There were job offers that I received where they said, hey, why don't you do this? We'll pay you X amount of money. And I'm like, wow, that sounds good. Benefit sounds real nice right now. That 401k is a nice number. I like that. But I said to myself, you know what? I want to push myself and see how far I can go. And I continue to invest in myself and I continue to push forward. And I talk to as many people as I possibly can about becoming an entrepreneur and testing the waters to see if it's something that you're meant to do. And I'm assuming the fact that you're here today and that you've logged in is because maybe in the back of your head, you're thinking, should I become an entrepreneur? Is it for me? Is it meant for me? So I'm hoping that over the course of this workshop and the next part, that I can answer some of those questions. And I'm going to share all my contact information because one of the things I love to do is to help people achieve greater success than I do. And so you're going to have full access to me, which is pretty cool, right? So the question is, well, to be or not to be an entrepreneur. And so the reality is entrepreneurs are not born. We're driven to do the work. This is not something that a lot of people, and again, maybe some people are very privileged. They're born, their parents own a business, and they say, this is what you're going to do. My father worked full-time for 45 years, just retired in 2020. I didn't grow up in a house where we had entrepreneurs, but something was telling me I wanted more for myself. And it was a drive that made me decide that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And the reality is that it was a drive that kept me running to be an entrepreneur. Because there were times where I said to myself, why am I doing this? 2020 was a very difficult year for a lot of people, right? It was COVID. A lot of people lost their jobs. Unfortunately, some people lost loved ones. It was a very challenging year for me in terms of my business. I lost $50,000 in contracts in 2020. $50,000. That is not chump change. And I literally lost that with no way of making it up. And I literally sat there and I said to myself, is now the time that I have to quit? Has the world changed forever? Am I ever going to get back to the success that I had before? And I asked all these questions and I started actually looking for jobs and saying, man, I want to look for a job. And if I find a good job, maybe I'll take it if they're paying the right money and all this other stuff. And every time I would start doing that and consider it, I said, no, I can't. I can't quit on myself. I can't quit on my dreams. I can't quit on my drive. So ultimately, if you're deciding whether or not becoming an entrepreneur for you is, you got to think and focus on that feeling you have in your gut. If something is telling you that you deserve more, if something is telling you you want more, if something is telling you that you want full control of your schedule and when to say yes and when to say no, if something is telling you, I don't want to answer to anyone, I want to be my own boss, I want to make my own decisions, I want to have meetings with myself, I want to give myself raises, I want to give myself permission to go on vacation, I want to just deal with me. If that is something that you're genuinely interested in, then entrepreneurship is for you. But it's not easy. And I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about what are some of the things that you guys have to focus on in terms of doing that, as well as some of the obstacles that you really have to consider. So this whole workshop is called Developing an Entrepreneurial Mindset, right? So what exactly is that? And of course, there's a very nice definition, which, as you can see on the board, involves what exactly does it take to become an entrepreneur? So it's a way of thinking that enables you to overcome challenges, be decisive, and accept responsibility for whatever the outcomes are. At the end of the day, it's about hustling. It's about believing in yourself. It's about believing in what you're offering, right? It's about knowing that no matter how difficult things get, you're not going to quit. It's about being an innovator, right? There's so many different things that are involved in terms of being an entrepreneur, and it's hard to sit down and even define it, but it's a mindset and it's an approach that is so empowering and so necessary that that is the way that you ultimately achieve success. Now, in reality, there are a lot of things that can get in the way of becoming an entrepreneur. And I'll ask you guys, does anybody want to guess? What do you think are the biggest obstacles to becoming an entrepreneur? Yes. Excellent. Excellent. And you agree, you anything else? Absolutely. Yes, sir. Starting in general. Excellent. Yes.
So I'm not sure how to explain it, but there's kind of similar to actually just starting, but every step of the way, do I do this or being inflexible? Do I do this? Do I do that? I think you have to make that decision every step.
Oh, there's a ton of trial and error.
Yeah, no, it's that concept. Should I do A, B,
That's it. And that's actually part of it too, is that you have to constantly grow. As an entrepreneur, you don't want to stay stagnant. You're constantly finding ways to grow. What's next? What's the next level? And that's how I started over the journey. It's like, it was just debate. Then it was debate in workshops. Then it was debate in PDs. Then it was going to organizations. First it was schools and it's not for profit. So there's constantly like, what's next? I'm in a position now where I'm like, what's next? And I'm trying to figure out what's next. And I have an idea, and you guys will hopefully hear about it at some point, but I'm not going to share it yet. But I know what's next and I know what's coming. But I agree with what was shared, because honestly, the greatest obstacles to becoming an entrepreneur that will eat away at you is self-doubt and fear. Self-doubt in terms of, am I good enough? Is it going to work? Is this product something that's going to sell? Is this service something that people want? And then, of course, it's the fear. Oh my God, what if I fail? What if I quit my job to try to do this and it doesn't work and I can never get another job ever again? What if I try to do this and no matter what I try to do, nobody wants to work with me, no one believes in me, and it's all over? And now what am I going to do? I got to start from scratch and I'm going to look like a fool. All of these things. I got to tell you, again, one of the scariest decisions that I ever had to make was deciding to become an entrepreneur, because there is the guaranteed biweekly paycheck disappears, and that is very scary for people. But you learn money management real quick, because I get paid through the Department of Education. If I do a service, I get paid 2 to 3 months later. So if I don't manage my money and manage my expenses, I'm going to be broke. I'm going to be here and then broke, and then here and then broke, and then here and then broke on a regular basis. Again, this is one of those things. This is one of those fears that we have to constantly work through. In reality, though, and I've encountered this so many times, and I'm one of those people, I'll tell you right now, and I'll give you guys all a heads up. I am the last person in the world to come to and express fear to. And it's not because I can't empathize with you, but because we come forward and we create excuses, but the problem is not everybody's willing to buy them. So I've had people that have come to me and said, oh, I want to become an entrepreneur, but I'm scared it's going to fail, so I'm not going to bother. Well, who said it was going to fail? Do you know it's going to fail? Have you tried and then it failed? Well, I tried, it didn't work. Well, did you try a second time or a third time or a fourth time? Because in reality, in most things that we do, if we try it once, we don't sit down and say, I'm never going to do it again. We say, you know, maybe I'll try it a second time. Yeah, I'll try it a third time. Let's see. So if you're willing to do that for all these other things, why not do it and believe in yourself? I'll give myself so many opportunities. I have failed so many times, but it is through my failures that I have succeeded. And yes, I stole that. I think it was from Michael Jordan, right? But its reality is this is something that I genuinely believe in. But what I'm telling you is this. If you tell me, well, starting a business, I don't know how to start it because do I do an LLC, an S Corp, and this and that? Okay, that's a real problem to sit down and work through. But if you come to me and you say, I don't want to do it because I'm scared, that's not an acceptable excuse. Because you think of all of the greatest inventions in the world, you think of all the insane successes that the people in the world have achieved, they've all been scared. Do you know it? The reality is when I talk to young people and I talk to them about what is the definition of failure, I believe that we've been taught wrong about failure, right? Because failure is in a moment, but it's an opportunity to succeed. And the example I usually give to them is this. If there was a garbage can right over here and I took a crumpled up piece of paper and I'm going to go do it. And of course, out of respect, you got to say Kobe, right? When you shoot. So there's the thing and I shoot it, Kobe, and I miss. If I sit down and I say, well, you know what I miss? I'm just going to walk away. It is what it is. I have failed. And even worse than that, I've accepted failure. But if I go and I pick the paper up and I come back here and I say, wait, the wind was slightly this way, so I'm going to move over here, shoot a little bit this way, and I shoot it a second time and I make it, I've turned that initial failure in that moment into a success. And in reality, that is what being an entrepreneur is all about. You're going to hit roadblocks and you're going to fail. If you accept it, you're accepting failure. If you say, I'm going to go back to the drawing board and fix up and tinker little things and then come back, you've now turned that failure in that moment into a success. And the other piece, and this was mentioned before, is that as you become more successful, you're ultimately going to get more people that are going to try to instill fear and doubt in you. What I tell people all the time is the more successful you are, the more people are going to hate on you and dislike you for no reason. There's going to be people who are comfortable not being an entrepreneur, and you're going to go to them and say, I want to start my own business and be an entrepreneur, and they're going to project their own fears and self-doubts on you and try to convince you not to do it. That's the reason why my mother taught me this. If my mother was sitting in a room right now, she'd be nodding her head. My mother told me, you don't tell anybody what you got planned or what you're cooking until it's done. I don't reveal anything that's going on there because I don't want that negativity. I'll manage it, but I don't want to deal with that negativity. You have something cooking. You want to start your own business. You want to be an entrepreneur. That's cool. Hold that close. Rely on the people that genuinely want to help you and support you in that process, but keep that close. Because there's going to be people coming out of the woodworks waiting for an opportunity to tell you that you're not good enough to do it or that you're going to fail. Oh, there's a million people doing this. What's the difference between you and them? I have a debate program. There are other debate programs throughout the entire city. I can sit down and say, you know what? Why am I running my debate program? There's other programs. What's the point? What makes mine different? I confidently walk into schools and say, there's other programs. I know mine's the best. I know it's the best. How do you know it's the best? Well, guess what? I did research on my competition. I know what's out there. I know the names of those organizations. I know who's running those organizations. And guess what? Not one of them is a lawyer. That's how I know mine's better. Right? But this is the whole thing, right? Because when you start, even when you're sitting down and starting with an idea, you find a need and you fit the need. That is how you develop a product. And in addition to that, you follow your heart and what you're passionate about. And it is through your passion that you will find a career. I tell people this all the time, and I'm going soft script because I love, I mean, this is what I do, right? But I tell people this all the time. The quickest way not to make money is to chase money. Some people are like, wait a minute, what did he just say? The quickest way not to make money is to chase money. The quickest way to turn around and be successful is to do what you love. Find whatever it is you love doing and do that for a living. And watch how the money chases you. Watch how happiness is part of your everyday. Watch how you can be sitting. I was up till 11 o'clock last night doing work. Not even stressed out, listening to Bob Marley, doing my work. I'm smiling. If I was working for somebody until 11 o'clock at night, I would be angry. I was working from, this is awesome. I'm so excited. I can't wait to present. I can't wait to do this with the kids. I can't wait to do this. It's a completely and totally different feeling when you're doing it for you. And it's something to think about. One of the things that as I was mentioning in terms of people disliking you, and it's 100% true. I have people that, for whatever reason, I mean, listen, well, let me not go into specific. I don't want to start name dropping. I don't know who's logged in. But anyway, but in reality, the truth is that the more that you go out and the more successful you are, the more people are going to dislike you. And in reality, you know what? I'm okay with that. If you don't like me because of my success, you better like hold on to your hat because it's going to get a whole lot worse for you, right? Because I'm not stopping and I'm not slowing down for anyone. That's your problem to deal with. That sounds like a you problem. That's definitely not a me problem, right? So when I sit down between, again, today, part 1 and part 2, I wanted to sit down and I wanted to break this up into 2 parts because there is a part that I want to talk about in terms of skills and the skills that you need in order to be successful, right? The skills in terms of how to operate your business in a very successful way. And I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to even reference my book because I wrote an entire book about that. I wrote an entire book about the skills that I used to get to the point that I am today. So I'm going to talk about the skills, but what I really want to do is focus on the characteristics that are necessary to be successful. And again, I don't believe that I'm special. I don't believe that I'm the smartest person in the room. I just know that I work hard and I know that I have these characteristics and I put them into play every single day when I'm running my business. Today, my goal is to focus on characteristics 1 and 2. After we go through 1 and 2, I'm going to have time to answer any questions that you guys have because, again, the goal is to make sure that you guys are getting what you want. I have my entire presentation. It's very one-sided. but I want to make sure you're asking the questions that's going to ultimately benefit you. Part 2, we're going to go through 3, 4, and 5, and then we're going to go through some soft skills so that way you can understand, okay, I have the characteristics. I want to be an entrepreneur. What skills do I need in order to make this a success? And we're going to go through all of that. So first thing that we have to focus on, one of the most important characteristics that you're going to need is you definitely need a positive mental state. You need a positive mind state. And the reason why you need it is because if you are negative, it is going to eat you alive. There is enough reasons to fear in the world. There's enough reasons to have doubt that's out there. There's enough reasons for you to sit down and say, oh my God, am I going to do this? Am I capable of doing this? So don't allow all of that to kind of get in here and mess you up. So one of the most important things, and I've heard this all the time as a kid, right? And I know that there's more to this, right? Because I think it's your aptitude doesn't determine your attitude. Your attitude determines your altitude. So what does that mean? It's the same thing. Oh, we talk about quotes. I'm a huge quote person. I'll share a quote with you guys in a minute. But there's a quote that says, if you believe you can or you believe you can't, either way, you're right. And it's one of those things where if you genuinely believe that I am not capable of doing it, I'm not smart enough to do it, it's not going to work out, you almost like will that entire situation into reality. It's a crazy situation how insane our brain is in terms of perspective. I'll give you an example. In 2015, I decided after many years of talking about it, I wanted to go do something that I wanted to do ever since I was a little kid growing up. And I used to grow up across the street from a motorcycle dealership. And I said to myself, one day, I'm going to get a motorcycle, right? 2015 comes and I said, this is the time. So I signed up for a 2-day course over a weekend in Brooklyn. And I said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go in there. Part 1 is you do in class. Part 2, you get on a bike and you go. So I go in there and I'm ready to take this class. And I sit in there and the guy's talking about different things or whatever it is. And then he says, okay, I'm going to ask you guys a question because I want to make sure you guys understand how this works. So he drew a big U. So imagine if you're driving and you got to come through like one of those like big U's, like you got to make like one of those long curves. And you're entering in one point and your goal is to make it through to the other end. So he would ask people, okay, so you're entering into this U. Where are you focused? Where's your energy and your focus on? So he drew 5 numbers. He says, is it once you enter? Is it halfway through? Is it at the apex? Is it over here 3/4 of the way? Or are you staring all the way at the end? What do you guys think? Say the end? The first turn? As you're going through it? Okay. Anyone else? Go ahead.
End.
Apex. Very good. The answer is you're staring all the way at the end. And I sat down and I honestly, let me tell you, I was a little too confident at that time. I raised my hand. I was like, come on, give us a hard one. This is number 2. You stay right here. And there was like, wrong, sorry. And I was like, oh no, please don't fail me. But you stare all the way at the end. I was like, why are you staring all the way at the end? Like, aren't you supposed to be like focusing like where you go? And the guy said something that was profound. And I was like, how am I going to learn a life lesson in a motorcycle class? He said, you've always focused your energy where you want to end up. So then he turned around and he asked, well, where's the one place you never want to stare when you're riding a motorcycle? Where's the last place you want to end up? The ground. That's a lot. It hurts. Right? The last place you want to do is focus where you don't want to go. And the truth of the matter is that, and I used to be this person, but so many of us spend so much energy thinking about what we don't want to happen, what we don't want to go wrong. I don't want this to happen. Oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, this is going to happen. Oh, I'm going to trip and fall. Oh, I'm going to forget. I'm going to do this and that. We invest time and energy in what we don't want to happen. And in reality, what we need to do is focus on what we want to happen. Focus on the positive. Focus on where we want to ultimately end up. And this is part of what's necessary. When you as an entrepreneur, when you develop a product and you start marketing and you start figuring out, you almost have to close your eyes and envision it being a success. and then open your eyes and make it happen. Instead of, if you close your eyes and you saw everything in turmoil and in flames, is that motivating you to say, yes, now I'm ready to go forth? And no, absolutely not. Envision everything going perfectly, then open your eyes and make it happen. This is part of the positive mental mind state that you absolutely need in order to be an entrepreneur. One of the easiest things that you can absolutely do in terms of maintaining this positive mentality is just remembering that you can only control those things that are within your control. And again, this is another quote. It's like so many quotes. There's so many smart people in this world, right? But there's a quote that I'm going to totally butcher, right? But it's like, God grant me the serenity to know the things that I can't control and the power to control the things I can. And I messed that up, but that's fine. You get it. Yes. Right? At the end of the day, we have to understand there's only certain things that are within our control. I can tell you, me personally, one of the things that upsets me more than anything is when I have to wear a suit and it's raining. I get angry. I mean, like legit angry. Like I'm very upset. And it's all the time, like I would wake up, look outside, see it raining, and I'm having a horrible day today. My suit's going to get wet. My socks are going to get wet. It's going to be like wet stains going all the way up to my knee. This is going to be horrible. I'm going to have a horrific day. And then I'm like, wait a minute. And I started waking up. I'm like, wait, I can't get mad at you unless you control the weather. Like, do you control the rain? Because if you do, that's kind of cool. But most people can't. Well, no one can. So if you can't control that, why am I going to sit down and invest time and energy getting upset or distracting myself by things I can't control? So you focus on what you can. You're running a business, you're in control of your product. You're in control of where it goes. You're in control of the marketing. You're in control of the outreach. You're in control of the relationships that you're ultimately developing. You can't control if a school decides to go with someone else. You can't control if somebody decides to invest in someone else's product instead of yours. You can't control that. But that doesn't mean you're not meant to do what you're doing. It just means that in that moment, something outside of your control didn't go your way. Doesn't mean it's time to quit. It just means you got to go back and look at what you can't control and continuing to develop from there. That's what it's all about. Learning what we can control and mastering what we can control. Being negative wastes nothing but time, energy, and money. And especially in the money piece, because I could sit down and tell you that in moments of being negative, we sit down and we're like, start doing things that we're not wholehearted in what we're trying to do. We're not 100% invested. Now, all of a sudden, we're investing time, energy, and money in things that doesn't make any type of sense. And it's like, okay, well, what's the purpose? What's the point? And in reality, one of the major lessons that I believe that we all should have learned after 2020 is that time is precious. You cannot afford to waste a single second being unhappy or unfulfilled or feeling woulda, coulda, shoulda. You can't invest time in that. I can tell you one of my proudest moments, and I do this all the time, between convincing people to become an entrepreneur and convincing people to become a lawyer. Those are probably my two favorite things. And I walked into a school once and I met a principal. And it's something very weird. Most educators want to be lawyers. Most lawyers want to be educators. This is the reason why I do both. So I met this principal, phenomenal principal, running an elementary school in Queens. And I was sitting there and I'm telling her about my program. And she said the worst thing in the world to me. She said, I really wish I became a lawyer. I said, so who told you you couldn't? What's stopping you? And I love doing that because, right? And I'm like, who said you can't be a lawyer? Who said you can't go to law school right now? And I kept harping on it. And I was harping on it. Next thing I know, I showed up to her school and do a workshop. She's like, Mr. C, Mr. C. I said, yeah, what's up? I'm enrolled in law school. I was like, get out of here. She goes, yeah, I'm going part-time. I'm like, wait, you're running a school and doing this part-time? She's like, yeah. I was like, that's phenomenal. I think as of right now, she's graduated law school. Now she's got a master's in education. She's got being a principal under her belt, and now she's got a law degree. You can't waste time. So if you believe that you want to be an entrepreneur, stop waiting for someone to come to you and say, hey, now's the time. That divine intervention of the clouds opening up and the light shining down, I mean, maybe it might happen. I doubt it. Stop waiting for someone to give you permission. There's no such thing as a perfect time. You know what the perfect time is? Right now. So don't wait. Don't sit down and say, oh, next week, next year, because here's the thing, life happens. And next week, something's going to come up and you're going to say the week after. This is the reason why I was supposed to start going to the gym in January, and maybe sometime in June I'll start. Because something always comes up, right? Next week I'll start. Or the week after, I don't know, whatever. The reality is that it's all, the whole journey of becoming an entrepreneur is full of ups and downs. It's constantly, you have your highs, you have your lows, you have your good days, you have your bad days. You have days where you feel like everything is amazing. You have some other days where you're like, what exactly am I doing? But it's being consistent and continuing to push forward. That is what ultimately is the key. And I can tell you, I am so insanely happy with where I am now in terms of where my business is. And as humbled as I am, as content as I am, as satisfied as I am nowhere near reaching my potential. There is so much other stuff that I can do. And it's kind of one of those things where every time you challenge yourself, it's like if you go to the gym and you say, okay, I don't know if I can lift 10 pounds, but I'm going to try it. Now you lift 10, you're like, you don't say to yourself, oh, I lift 10, I'm good. That's it. I'm done. I'm retiring from the gym. You come back, you say, let me see if I can do 15. Now let me try 20, 25, 30. Sky's the limit. The sky is literally the limit. You can do whatever it is that you ultimately want to do. We talk about quotes. One of my favorite quotes that I love to share, right? And it has to do with being resilient, and it has to do with bouncing back. When everything seems to be going against you, remember that an airplane takes off against the wind, not with it. So you're going to be stressed out. You're going to be scared. You're going to be nervous starting a business. You're not going to know if you're doing the right thing. You're not going to know if you have a mentor or not. You're not going to know if you're making the right decisions. And that is okay. And I can tell you it's all normal. There's nothing irregular about any of that. Because even in the process of doing it, you're going to feel some of those feelings. And that's all right. But don't let that be the determining factor as to why you don't ultimately decide to do it. And part of what the skills that we're going to talk about in part 2, one of the most important skills that relates to all of this is the ability to adapt and to be resilient, to face adversity and challenges and to bounce back and to keep pushing forward. Because that is one of the most essential skills that you need as an entrepreneur. Because when those moments where it gets difficult and you think you want to quit, those are the moments that you turn to yourself and you say, no, this is not what it's supposed to be. I am destined to do more. And if you decide in that moment an entrepreneur is not for me, there's nothing wrong with that. Because again, I don't believe everyone is cut out to be an entrepreneur. My brother is an insanely intelligent person. Graduated valedictorian from middle school and high school, got into one of the most competitive medical programs in the entire country, graduated the youngest doctor in his class, insanely successful. But the idea of becoming an entrepreneur is something he couldn't handle. It's not about intelligence. It's about heart. It's about having that drive. It's about taking that risk. And I don't know, I love that risk. I don't like the unknown necessarily, but I like taking risk. Because here's the thing, you take a risk and it works out. That reward is so amazing. It's so phenomenal. And it's so awesome when you know that it's all yours. The second characteristic that is absolutely essential for being an entrepreneur is you have to have a creative mindset. And the reason why it's so essential to have a creative mindset, and this is in part of the planning process of developing whatever your business is going to look like. And again, I don't know anyone in here in terms of like what your ideas may be, what business you want to start, what venture you ultimately want to go into. It doesn't matter. But I can tell you right now, if I have a conversation with anybody and you say, oh, this is what I want to do, I can tell you right now, if you don't have a creative approach to doing it, you're going to fall in with everyone else. I had somebody approach me. He has a mobile detailing business. And I feel like mobile detailing at this point, it's like a dime. I'm a huge car guy. I think half my Instagram on my car page is people with mobile detailing. So he comes to me and he's like, I have this mobile detailing business, but it's like, it's not doing what it's supposed to do. I'm like, all right, well, let me see your business plan. I'm like, well, here's the problem. You're like everyone else. Why should I hire you? It's like picking one out of like 50 people. What makes you different? What do you offer that's different than the next person? Why should I invest my time, energy, and money in you? What makes you special? These are questions you have to ask when you decide to become an entrepreneur. What is the need I'm trying to fit? And what is the creative approach towards addressing that particular need? That is what you ultimately have to sit down and think about. And this is all in the planning stages of your business and what it is that you ultimately want to do. I'm actually kind of curious. Does anybody here want to share if anyone is considering, do we have any entrepreneurs in here already? I'm kind of curious. Besides me. See, that's cheating. Yes, you are. Can you, if you're comfortable, do you want to share what you do? Hold
on. March 25, I enrolled MOA, IBO, not program, like an entrepreneur. So I'm just looking at the website. I actually don't know in depth, just started.
Okay, just started. I like that. Yes, okay, over here.
So me and one of my friends are working on making an inventory management system for mainly small businesses, because we'll be able to do face-to-face with the clientele. Oracle and CRM already does it, but they're never face-to-face or all online. So that's what's going to separate us.
Like it. See, you already have that as part of your business pitch, because that's part of your pitch is telling them, you go in there and you're like, this is what I have. This is why we're different. That's perfect. And here's the thing. This is it. And I want to be careful when I say this, right? And I'm sure people understand where I'm coming from. COVID, as horrible as it was also a springboard for a lot of people to develop their own business and become entrepreneurs. A lot of people use that opportunity when people weren't working, when they were at home and they were like sitting down at home and they're like, this is a great time. That project I've been putting off, that book I've been waiting to write, that business I've been waiting to start, I got nothing but time. And so now all of a sudden you have all these people that are starting to do it and it's like, this is phenomenal, right? But there's also the right way to do it, which is about being creative. I tell you, one of the most humbling experiences that I think I've ever had, I was invited to an event in Brooklyn and I was going to receive a proclamation from the Brooklyn Borough President's office. So I got to this event and everything is like all set up and nice and stuff like that. And I know there were other honorees, but I didn't meet them. I'm like, listen, I'm here to get my thing. I'm like ready to take pictures, right? So I'm up there and I'm like ready to see my reward. And there was this, I mean, absolutely adorable little girl. She must have been like 9 years old. She's up there and I'm like, isn't this girl cute? She's going to like hand out the awards and take pictures. She got a proclamation too. I'm like, what's going on over here? I'm like, how's this little girl getting a proclamation? This little girl at like 9 years old started her own business, obviously with the help of her parents. She developed a business because she plays with dolls, right? And all the dolls that she plays with, none of them have hair that looked or felt like her hair. So she decided to create a line of dolls for girls, little girls of color that had hair that was natural hair, and learning how to brush it and do all this other stuff or whatever it was. And this girl was making bank and insanely successful in terms of doing that. More people knew this girl than me. Everybody was like jumping up and applauding for her. And I was like, maybe I got 3 claps, right? But it's crazy because even at that young age, and I know her parents helped her out or whatever, but even at that young age, she found a problem. I'm sorry? That's it. She found the problem and she says, I have a solution. And it was creative enough where she developed an entire business off of it. So at that point, I said to myself, wait a minute. This 9-year-old girl could sit down and be on the same level as me. I need to step it up. If this 9-year-old girl can start her own business and be successful, no one in here has an excuse. No one watching this has an excuse. There's none. 9 years old, receiving the same award as I am at an event. I was like, man, this is a humbling but beautiful experience, right? Like it's a wonderful thing. God only knows how much more money this girl has made in that time, because I know it's been a couple of years. So basically, the way that an entrepreneur operates, right? And we call, here I call it the life cycle, is that you're constantly developing either products or services, and then you're finding creative ways to do it. As I mentioned, in my journey, the first creative thing I developed was my debate program. And that's what I marketed. And then when schools were like, hey, listen, you're a lawyer, you work with our kids, do workshops. So I'm like, okay. So I created an entire workshop program. Then they're like, well, what about our parents? So I created an entire parent workshop program. Then I have not-for-profit organizations like, hey, what about us? You just work in the schools. Don't worry. I'll do a community-based program series for you guys, right? So I started doing all of these different things, and then naturally, it just started developing. It's one of those things where I literally, in my house, have a list of all these ideas of new services and opportunities that I want to start presenting to people, because this is what the life cycle of an entrepreneur is. You never can stay stagnant. You can develop the most amazing product in the world, but you can't stop there. This isn't like music, right? You have people who are famous for the rest of their lives because they had one good song. Everybody knows Vanilla Ice because of one song. But as an entrepreneur, it doesn't work that way. You don't make one product and say, I'm retiring and that's it. Now everyone's going to look at you and say what's next, but more importantly, you have to ask yourself, what is next? What is the next product? What's the next service? What's the next idea? And you got to continue to develop, because that's how you stay marketable. Because in that event where you develop this program to help people, and then you go and you create stage 2 of your product, you're going to still have people reaching out to you to contract you for stage 1, and you're going to have a whole new group of people reaching out for stage 2. Now you've gone next level. Now you start offering 3. You got random people. I want stage 1. I want stage 2. I want stage 3. I want all 3. And you're like, this is amazing, right? But you can't stay stagnant in that entire process. The good thing about being your own boss, well, there's a good and a bad. And again, maybe this is probably a really good opportunity in terms of explaining this, right? Because I don't want to say I got heckled. Maybe I did get heckled, right? At an event where I was talking about entrepreneurship. And I think that I'm just so passionate about talking about it. And I think I just have so much fun being an entrepreneur that I was sitting over here like smiling and somebody was like, man, why you make it sound like it's so easy? It's not. I was like, well, what do you mean? And it's like, there's challenges and there's obstacles and this and that, and you're only painting one side of the picture. Well, I was like, well, first off, what was the first characteristic you have to have? Positive mindset. So I'm not going to sit up here crying, talking about how hard and insane and difficult. Oh no, this is bad and don't do it. And please, you got to have a positive mind state. The reality is, though, it's insanely difficult to be an entrepreneur. It's very hard. Sometimes it's hard getting people to listen to you. It's hard to get people to trust in you. It's hard to develop products. It's hard to figure out learning how to do stuff you never even knew before. I just learned about Linktree like 2 months ago because I was sending people like 10 different websites and, oh, here's my LinkedIn and here's this website and this website. And then somebody sent me an email and it was like one link and I clicked on one link and it was like 30. I was like, wow, this is actually kind of cool. I didn't know about that. I'm not the most tech savvy person. I had to learn how to do a website. I had to learn how to create business cards that stand out from other people's. And I never worried about that in my entire life. I had to learn all of these things. And that was scary because I was competing with people that was already putting it into practice. I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that I have to work on now is I go and I speak all over the place. I maybe have 2 videos of me speaking. And you want to know what the reality is? I'm so invested in going and presenting and talking and giving back. I don't care about getting videos. And the reason why a lot of people collect videos is because they put it on social media. They get likes and follows. And I don't care about likes and follows. I care about doing the work. But at the same time, I'm harming myself. Because to stay competitive, I got to have videos, right? I got to be able to do those really cool clips that everybody is doing where it's like this thing and then it fades into this. And I don't know. I still don't know how to do any of that stuff. I'm learning how to do that now. But it's not easy. The payment process is not easy. When people ask me all the time, and especially little kids, I love little kids, man. These kids, like the unfiltered questions that little kids ask is so amazing. So I'll do a career day and I'm like, yes, you have a question for me as a lawyer? And they're like, yeah, what kind of car do you drive? I'm like, whoa, right? Talk about getting in my personal business. But they ask a lot of times, well, how much money do you make? And I tell them, well, here's the answer. And you're not going to like my answer, but here's the answer. The answer is, I don't know. They're like, Mr. C, messing with us. Why are you playing with it? And I said, but it's the reality, because here's the thing. As an entrepreneur, you're a fisher. Well, we'll call it fisher person, right? You're a fisherman, right? You go out fishing. Here's the thing. If you go out fishing tomorrow and you catch no fish, dinner's not going to look very good. If you go out and you catch 10 fish, dinner's going to look amazing, right? This is the life of an entrepreneur. I don't know what tomorrow's going to look like. I don't know what next week is going to look like. When I started working as an entrepreneur, my calendar for 2 weeks in advance was filled. A month later, it was like my whole thing was blank. I didn't know what was going to happen next month. So I had to, oh man, I got to start securing contracts and figuring out this and that or whatever it is. I constantly had to do that. I could never get complacent. I'm already in a position, I have contracts for 2023 already. I have people that are like, yeah, we want to book you for 2023. I'm like, okay, that works. I got to buy my calendar from Staples now. 2023, hopefully they have it, right? But it's like, that's part of the hard part, is that sometimes you're so on unstable ground. Sometimes you feel amazing, and then there's sometimes where you get that self-doubt and that fear creeps in, and you have to convince yourself, it's okay, I can manage it. So it's not always easy. And I don't want to present it as it being always easy. It's definitely not. But it's fun. I enjoy it. Right? And maybe I'm enjoying it more because I'm at this level where I'm on cruise control at this point. I'm at the level now where I've developed my business and my brand so well that I don't even have to be in the room and people are talking about me and reaching out to me and saying, we heard about you, we want to work with you. That's the level of entrepreneur that you want to reach. You don't even have to be in the room to make a sale. You don't even have to be in the room to be talked about. That's the level that you're ultimately reaching towards. And we're going to talk about the skills you need to get to that point during part 2. Oh, it's a teaser. Right? Now you're going to come back because, yeah, I want to do that. And I want to do that. Right? Yes. Yes, I will. So the question, and correct me if I take this wrong. So you said that once I reach this level of success, do I have people that work under me? Like how do I manage that? Is that pretty much it? So I would say that is probably the toughest part about being an entrepreneur, at least one of the greatest issues that I had, right? Because over the course since 2009, this was my baby. I developed it, I fed it, I nurtured it, I cuddled it, I did the whole thing until it grew, right? And then I realized I reached a point where I was my own worst enemy. Like, how did you become your own worst enemy? Well, when I had schools in the Bronx start reaching out to me and saying, we want your services, and I'm like, let me put this in a GPS. Oh, yeah, that's kind of tough, right? I can't run all the way out there and then get back here to court and this and that. So I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't. I started saying no to opportunities because I literally didn't have the time to do it. I've had people outside of the state of New York reach out to me and say, hey, what's going on with your debate program? Can we bring it to our state? I'm like, I'm not set up for that yet. So I reached a point where I'm like, oh man, I got to ask for help. All this entire time I was working on my own, but I got very scared because I'm like, I nurtured this thing since an infant. How can I trust somebody to care for something that I love so passionately? It's like my car. No, I'm just kidding, right? I'm like, how can I get somebody to do this? And that's been the biggest struggle. How am I going to find somebody that is genuinely as invested in this thing as I am? Because the answer is no one is as invested as I am. But I also realize that if I genuinely want to keep growing and I want the reach to expand and I want to see how high I can go, I have to start trusting people. And so I actually made a very tough decision that worked out fantastically towards the end of last year, where I developed what I call borough directors for my programming, specifically for my debate program. And I wanted to get a borough director in Brooklyn. I wanted to get one in the Bronx, and I wanted to get one in Queens to assist me in Queens. Manhattan, I just felt was just too large to kind of like manage. And I still don't know where Staten Island is, so I can't work with them. But I decided that that's what I was going to do. And I was able to partner with somebody who initially was somebody I knew in law school, then became someone who came out and judged for my competitions. And now her and I work together, and she's managing some of the schools. And this is just the beginning. She worked out independently. She was able to contract with 3 schools in a short period of time. And now I'm like, this is the start of something beautiful, because now I can say, you can start handling this, and I can start focusing on this. Because now in Long Island, they're like, we want the debate program. We want you to come out here. We want you to do programming and services. And I'm like, I can't manage that and do this unless I ask for help. And as an entrepreneur, that might be one of the hardest things that you'll ever have to do, is ask for help. But I'm here to tell you, you have to humble yourself and ask for help, because you cannot manage it all on your own. It's impossible. And if you try to manage it on your own, you're going to become your own worst enemy, just like I became my own worst enemy as well. So part of being incredibly successful in terms of doing all of this is that you have to become a creative thinker. You have to think outside of the box, right? I think entrepreneurs, if you're a creative thinker, naturally becoming an entrepreneur makes sense. And if you're an entrepreneur, being a creative thinker naturally falls in line. You're always thinking creatively. Now, I can tell you one of my least favorite things and one of my biggest pet peeves, I hate when people say, you got to think outside the box. Think outside the box. Think outside the box. Because my question is, what the hell is the box? What's a box? What box? What box are you putting me in that's telling me that I have to somehow think outside of it? Well, you know what the box is? The box is this imaginary limitation that we set for ourselves. The example I always give, right, to young people, and I break stuff down to young people all the time, but these examples make sense. If I were to take a jar right now and put fleas in it, right? And fleas can jump. So I put a jar, put a bunch of fleas in there, and I put a lid. You know what's going to end up happening? The fleas are all going to try to jump out of the jar. But what's going to happen? They're going to jump up. They're going to hit their little heads on the top of the jar. And they're like, no. We can't jump that high. We're going to lower it this amount. And they condition themselves to stay at a certain height. I could literally take the jar off and not one will jump out, because they've conditioned themselves. I have to stay at this level and I can't go any higher. That is the box that we put ourselves in. We set our own limitations. No one else does it. We convince ourselves, I have to stay in this box. I have to stay in this corner. I'm meant to do this. I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to be here. I can't go past this. That's the box. So when we say think outside the box, what I say is destroy the box. There is no box. Right? The example I always give in The Matrix, I don't know if people saw the movie The Matrix, one of my favorite movies, right? If you ever see The Matrix, there's a scene where Neo goes to see the Oracle, right? And she goes to see the little girl. Well, what's the little girl doing? She's got the spoon and she's bending it. It's doing all these weird things. And he picks it up and he's like, how did you do this? She goes, well, the secret is there's no spoon. As soon as you accept the fact that there is no spoon, now all of a sudden you can make it do whatever you want it to do. You have to realize there's no limitations that are placed on you. It's cliche, but the reality is you can do whatever it is that you choose to do. You can do whatever it is that you ultimately set your mind to. Other people are going to try to convince you that you're in a box. Other people are going to try to convince you to be complacent. And the only reason why you're going to be complacent is if you convince yourself that you need to be complacent. The second you accept that, you put that lid on that jar. And that's the problem. Don't do that to yourselves. The sky is the limit in terms of what you can ultimately accomplish. If I had $1 for every time someone told me that I wasn't going to accomplish something, I would be a millionaire, but I would still be doing the work that I'm doing right now. Let people tell you you can't. Don't tell yourself you can't. Don't place yourself in that box. Destroy that box. Be as creative as you want. Think outside the box. Take those risks. Think creatively. If you sit down and you say, I don't want to quit my job and start my business, do it as a side hustle. Get one customer. You don't need 30. Start with one. Help out that one client and then go to them and say, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? Go back to the drawing board, fix it. Get a second customer, second client. Provide that service. What did I do? What did I do wrong? Fix that. Go get a third. Go get a fourth. And continue to do that. That's the reason why when I created my program, the first school I ever went into, I told them, I have to teach the program. Well, why do you got to teach the program? You got time for that? I don't have time for that, but I got to do it because that's the only way I'm going to know that the program works. When these fifth graders look at me all crazy on a lesson, I'm like, no, I got to go back to this lesson and fix it. But when they're jumping around, engaged and excited, that's how I know I got a good lesson. Check, on to the next thing. Trial and error. And being as creative as you possibly can be under the circumstances. So as I promised, I wanted to make sure to leave plenty of time to answer questions that you guys have. But again, two things that I definitely want to make sure to share. And a quick reminder, the second part to this series is going to be April 27th in the Dome. The goal is to continue to talk about the 3 other characteristics. We're also going to talk about the essential soft skills that you need in order to be successful as an entrepreneur. I'm going to run through all of those soft skills, and it's literally going to be talking to you guys out of some of the main points from my book. I don't even know if I'm allowed to bring my book or sell my book. Am I allowed to do that? Oh, I can? Oh. If I knew that today, well, that's my fault. I should have asked, right? Oh, I can do complimentary books at a cost? Okay, I can do that. We'll do, oh, even better.
Is there an email that we can purchase?
The other piece that I absolutely want to make sure to share is this. I am not somebody who likes to come in here and talk a good game about wanting to support and stuff like that. And then when you come up to me and ask me a question, I'm like, please don't talk to me, right? Like, leave me alone. I don't have time for you. I'm one of those people, honestly, if you take a picture of this, you copy this information down, you legit have more access to me than my parents do. Because they don't know how to email and they don't know what the web is. No, I'm just kidding, right? But this is, I put this on here because I encourage you and I challenge you to take advantage of the information that I have. I am genuinely invested in helping people. And the reason why is because if I am able to help you come up with $1 million idea, it takes nothing off my plate. You can become a millionaire off my advice, and I'm okay with that because it takes nothing off my plate. So there's no reason why I cannot help you. There's no reason why I shouldn't be willing to help you. I want to genuinely help you. That's what it's all about. So you have access to me. You can reach out to me, email me, call me, write me through my website, whatever it is that you want to do. You have a question, concern, anything like that, you have full access to me and I'm here to support. But even before we get to that point, I'll use this time now to open it up for either people that are on the Zoom call or for anyone that's in here. If anyone has any questions about anything that I discussed, anything I did not discuss, anything that you want to ask me that I could potentially help you on, or if there's any part of my journey that maybe you felt I left out that you want to ask, literally, I will answer any question that you guys ask me. Like, I'm not a shy person, so hit me with your best questions.
Okay. Hi, my name is Amrit. So my question is, when you have more on your plate than you could handle and you're doing it consistently, but it just keeps adding up and you're not really crossing stuff off, it's just spreading out through the weeks, what do you do then? Like, you know, you're not going to be able to get all the work done or you have to drop something. So what do you do to, I had that experience recently. I had to drop one of the programs I was in because I couldn't handle the workload. So
Okay. That's an excellent question. So I do two separate things in order to manage that, right? So one thing that I do, and I do it 4 times a year, is I get one of those large Post-it notes. And what I do is that on that large Post-it note, I write all the stuff that I'm currently working on and all the projects I eventually want to work on, right? And I literally just kind of like let it go. And what happens every 3 months is that I sit down and I look at that list, and I have to be honest with myself. If there's a project that's on there that I haven't even started looking at or figuring out what to do, I cross it off. If there's something that I have started working on or I'm genuinely want to start working on it, I leave it on there when I redo my entire list, right? So that's one of the things from a large scale. The other thing that I do, and I start my day and I end my day the exact same way every single day. So me personally, I am, and if the CEO of Post-it is watching this, please call me, because I invest so much in Post-it notes, it's obscene. So what I do every single morning is I write a list of all the things that I want to accomplish that day. I know that I had a successful and empowering day based on the amount of things I was able to cross off. So what I do is I start my morning, I create my list, and I carry that list with me. And over the course of the day, it could be something as simple as call the district attorney back, send the email to this person, contact the school for this, write the invoice for this. Whatever the case is, I write that entire list. And at the end of the day, whatever's not left over gets crossed over into the next day. And I hate crossing over to the next day, because what I do is in the next morning, not only do I have the list of things I want to do that day, I got to throw in whatever was left off. And I hate seeing too many things on that list. It stresses me out. So I'm motivated to cross off as many things off that list as I possibly can. And I literally do this every single day. And what I usually also do too is by Wednesday, I write a list of all the things that I want to get done by the weekend in preparation for the following week. By Friday, I've already accomplished everything I need to accomplish for the following week, Monday and Tuesday. I am always trying to stay ahead, but it is through those lists that I do that. And the reason why I write everything down is because to me, it's essential to have everything written down to be visual. Because if you try to remember everything in here, you're going to forget something, and you don't want to forget something that's going to hurt you. So I write everything out, visualize it, look at it, see it, right? List on list on list on list. That's what I ultimately do, and you cross it out based on success. Any other questions?
I have a couple of friends that have like, I guess like a business, it'd be like a clothing line, right? But like every time they try starting it up like over and over again, it always like got stuck onto like, you know, just friends and family. So like my question would be like, how was networking like for you to like expand, you know?
Gotcha. Yeah, the thing is, it's so to an extent, I actually appreciate that approach, because usually it's family and friends that are your first customers, right? Those are the ones that are probably going to be the most critical, and they're the ones that are probably going to spend the money in terms of that. But then you have to start thinking about, well, where do I ultimately want to end up? There's several tools at your disposal, right? One, which is one of the most powerful tools you can access, is LinkedIn. Connecting with other professionals that are doing the work and asking them, what are your resources? What are the networking that you do? Because there's no point reinventing the wheel, because if somebody's already doing it and it's successful, copy that. There's nothing wrong with that, right? The second thing is you have to find out what circles you need to be in order to market your product. Because if you're only hanging out with your friends and you're asking yourself, why am I only selling products with my friends? That's the problem right there. So start figuring out, where do I need to go into? Go into a community center and present your product there. Ask a school if you can come to a PT meeting and present it there. There's a lot of different, and again, I'm speaking generally because it all depends on what your specific product is, but you have to like force yourself to go into those areas and present it. Now, obviously the difficult part about all of this stuff is COVID, because one of the fun things that I used to do for networking, and this is something I started doing with a friend of mine. I hated networking because my whole thing was like, I get out of work and I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody, right? Like I'm done. I've reached my talking to people capacity. So I had a friend of mine who she's like, listen, we have to network to grow. And mind you, she's doing insane things right now. We got to network. So we decided to make a game out of it. We would find out networking events that were going on throughout the city, and we would just start crashing them. And we'd have a competition about who can collect the most business cards. And we just started doing that. And it wasn't like we weren't going to like PETA events, right? Like we were going to events that were related towards the stuff that we were passionate about. So the cards that we were collecting were actually cards we were going to use, but we made a game out of it. Now, all of a sudden, we're reaching out to people and we start getting ideas and doing this and that or whatever it was. And we had fun in the process of getting that. But again, it's all about being creative and finding out what circle of people do I need to be in. Yes, sir.
How's it going? I kind of have like a two-part question.
Okay.
First one being just kind of piggybacking off of networking. So support system. You mentioned earlier, entrepreneurship is kind of eventually you'll start to lose people on your side or lose friends. They'll deter you in becoming an entrepreneur. So that sounds like it eventually it becomes a lonely road trying to pursue entrepreneurship in any endeavor. So how do you develop a strong support system? Like, what did you do to do that? And my second question is a little bit unrelated. Are you familiar with Gary Vee?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone
Love
is at
Gary
this
Vee.
point. Yeah, he mentioned that entrepreneurs are. He had said, I think, if I'm misquoting him, please let me know. But he said entrepreneurs are born, but you've mentioned today that they can be made. So, maybe there's a difference in opinion there. If you want to elaborate on that.
Well, Gary Vee said it. It's probably true. No, I'm just kidding. Well, so I'll go back to the first part, and it's actually a little bit of cheating, but I'll give you a little bit of a secret, because part of one of the other three characteristics we're going to talk about is that you have to learn how to be your own cheerleader, right? Because sometimes the road to the top is going to be lonely, and that's the reality. And it's funny because you also start looking at your friends differently. I can tell you right now, I have a group of friends that I've known since college. 20-something years I've known them, right? Very good friends, very close friends of mine. And as much as I love them and I care about them or whatever, we're doing very different things. I can't talk to everybody the same way about what's going on. I can joke and this and that and watch movies and drink and this. But when it comes to talking about business, I can't talk to anybody about that. But I do have people that are running their business that I do talk to. And we have business lunches instead of hangouts. And we pick each other's brains and we give each other ideas and we're critical with each other. In that process of getting there, you're going to find people that you're going to connect with, that you're going to learn from. I talk to kids all the time about looking at your circle, right? The circle of people you spend the most time with. If you're the smartest, most ambitious, and hardest person working in your circle, you need a new circle. The ideal circle, you are somewhere in the middle. There's people in there that you're learning from, and there's people that you're also teaching. Because it's through teaching that we learn to perfect things. And it's obviously through learning that we learn things. So you have to be in the middle. If you're at the top of your circle and all you're doing is teaching and no one is feeding into you, you got to change your circle. And the second piece in terms of the whether they're born or they're made, I mean, listen, I think a lot of people have different perspectives. The reason why I don't believe that people are born into it is because as young kids, very rarely have I spoken to an elementary or middle school kid that said they wanted to be an entrepreneur. Very rarely have I said that. They'll talk about all the stuff they want to own, and then they get the usual cliche, I want to be a doctor, a teacher, an astronaut, a police officer, and this and that, or whatever it is. But the problem, and the deeper issue for me, is that the school systems are not teaching kids about this additional career. I know when I was growing up, you're either one of two things, a doctor or a lawyer. There was like nothing else. I get excited when I go to career days and I see a chef. Like I'm going and speaking to the chef like they were the president. Like, oh, you're a chef? Like, this is nuts. Like, tell me cook something, right? Like, so it's like I get excited because the kids are getting exposed to things that are outside of the norm. So even though, yeah, I go to career days and talk about a lawyer, I love talking about the fact that I'm an entrepreneur because these kids need to hear that at a young age. And it's in that moment that they decide, maybe I want to start my own business, have my own product, run my own line, do whatever. And that's how they develop into entrepreneurs. That's my approach. But very rarely have I seen a kid like a fifth grader be like, yeah, I was born to be an entrepreneur. I haven't seen that in my experience. So I don't know.
So Richard, we have a couple of questions from the Zoom chat.
Oh, please.
One is from Suzanne. How do we keep a community engaged and active?
A community of, I'm not sure what that means.
Suzanne, would you like to elaborate a bit more? We'll wait for her to respond. In the meantime, Jean has, okay, she did respond. She said, how to keep a community engaged and active who have similar interests to what it is you want to start.
Okay. So I'm assuming, I guess it's like, how do you compete with people that have similar, I'm gonna assume that that's what the question is. So how do you separate yourself from the pack, basically? And this is something, again, and this is whether or not you want to become an entrepreneur or not. You always have to think of yourself and ask yourself, what can I do to separate myself from everyone else? And it's funny because I teach, the class that I teach here at Queens College is under the SEEK program, and it's called The World of Work. And I teach, my book is the reading for the course. And for any student that has taken a course and can attest to it, the entire time that I'm teaching, the main thing that I'm teaching them is how to separate themselves from everyone else that's competing for the same position. And as an entrepreneur, that you take that and you got to take it to a whole other level. What makes my product different? What makes my approach different? What makes me stand out differently? And it's, the thing is that it's in little things and it's in large things. And I'll give you an example. You guys have all seen business cards. You're probably tired of business cards. I've received so many business cards, it's disturbing. And you know what usually happens? I get home and they go in the pile. So I said to myself, how am I going to separate myself from everyone else? So I was like, I'm going to create a really cool business card. This is what I did. I created a card that on one side has my logo, and on the other side, you scan it. And guess what? You know what I learned 2 months ago? Linktree. So guess what this thing scans to? My Linktree. So now all of a sudden, this one card that literally only has my logo and this thing on it has access to my LinkedIn, all my websites, my book, if you want to purchase my book, all of this stuff through this. And it's a little square card. You get it, I'm telling you, and this is the thing I love. You give the card and you're like, this is nice. As soon as I get that reaction, I'm like, yes. You're going to treat this card differently than all the other ones. It's going to stand out because it's a square and it looks cool, right? So it's in little details, and in the larger details, you have to find your way to separate yourself from everyone else. Oh, now all the hands are going. Like, can I get a card? Yes. Everyone who wants a card can get a card. Yes.
So another question that I have is, how do you find like-minded people?
How do you find?
Like-minded people that are as driven? Because everybody talks a big game, but then
Oh, yeah.
when it comes to doing it, nobody wants to do the work.
So again, I say LinkedIn is definitely there. The other thing that a lot of people have been taking advantage of, and I've actually been taking advantage of as well, is Facebook groups. It's actually kind of amazing how many people are in Facebook groups that are similarly, you know, in terms of like their mindset and their approaches. I think I'm in like 12 Facebook groups based on all of my different interests that I'm involved in, the work I do in the community, working with parents and this and that. I have all of these different things. And when people start posting stuff and sharing stuff and commenting, and I like what their energy is, I send them a private message. Hey, can we have a conversation? Can we like have a Zoom thing real quick and kind of talk? And now all of a sudden, it just kind of turns into that. It's actually kind of crazy because I met this guy on in a Facebook group that I'm in. And I guess I posted a lot of stuff about my work and this and that or whatever it is. He reached out to me personally. We started having a conversation. He just started his own business and he wants me to be a partner in his business. Why? Because we're like-minded. We have the same approach. So he reached out to me, said, let's do it. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. I didn't even have to work for that. But I think it's in Facebook groups. I would definitely recommend that. And then through LinkedIn, those are, to me, are prime real estate. And it's stuff that you can do literally sitting in this, well, not right now because I'm talking, but it's literally something you can do anytime. You don't have to like go anywhere crazy to do it. And then look at the people that like check off some of those boxes and develop those personal relationships with them.
What do you regret the most, or what would you have done differently?
I wish I invested in Apple a long time ago, right? Damn. Wow, it's kind of hard because it's crazy. I don't like answering that question. And the reason why I don't like answering that question, and I'm going to try to answer it anyway. The reason why I don't like it is because it's almost like, what was the movie? It was like Back to the Future, right? Where he goes back in time. And if you change one moment, then it changes your entire future, right? So I'm grateful for all the obstacles. I'm grateful for all the failures. I'm grateful for all the successes that I've accomplished. So I would be afraid to change something because if I could be exactly where I am now and change something, then I would do it. The only thing that I would sit down and honestly tell you that I wish I could change is I wish I started all of this earlier. because I wasted several years of just kind of coasting through a mindless, meaningless work when I could have started my business earlier, and who knows where I would be right now. I wish I believed in myself sooner. I wish I took that risk sooner instead of waiting. That, I would say, is a regret.
Hi, how's it going? My name is Justin Tristan. I've recently learned personally how important habits are. So what would some habits that are really important to you that would help, I guess, cultivate the positive mindset or even creativity?
Okay. So definitely one of the habits that you want to create is you want to be consistent in terms of what your scheduling and what your day and your approach to your day looks like. So my schedule looks nuts, right? I have some days where I'm waking up and I'm going to a school and I'm meeting with parents and I got to do this, I got to do that. Tomorrow I'm in court and then I'm meeting with a group of high school students to do a presentation. Then I have a parent workshop. I'm all over the place, but I start and I end my day consistently every single time the same way. So developing those habits of making sure I create a checklist of what I want to accomplish and I review my day every single day. That's what I do. So that's definitely one thing. The second thing that is absolutely essential, a really important habit that you have to develop and maintain, is you got to be very good at self-care. Because that's one of the things I've talked about, how stressful and ups and downs and this and that or whatever it is you go through. You have to have a habit of making sure that you find time to take care of yourself throughout the entire process. It's hard to be positive when you're exhausted. It's hard to be positive when you're not eating right. It's hard to be positive when all you feel like you're doing is work and you feel like it never, ever ends and you're not doing anything fun that you genuinely enjoy outside of working. Self-care is essential. And that's something that I genuinely put into practice all the time. And self-care for me looks different than it would for you. For me personally, going for a drive is the most therapeutic thing that I could do. Just getting in my car and driving nowhere. Love it, right? That's me. Going outside, therapeutic. Hanging out with my dog, therapeutic, right? It all depends on what it works. There's some people that, oh, I go to the gym. That sounds stressful, right? I don't know if that's therapeutic necessarily for me, but if it works for you, fantastic. But you got to figure out what works for you, and that has to be part of your habit, part of your routine. You work hard, you play hard. That's the balance to life. That's what I genuinely believe. If you work hard, play hard. I'll tell you right now, what I ended up doing at the beginning of this year, I said to myself, I have a plan. Here's my plan. I want the entire summer off. July and August, no work, no reading, no writing, no nothing. But I knew in order to do that, I had to stretch myself insanely thin for 6 months. So I'm working early, I'm working late, I'm teaching a Saturday program, I'm staying up late on Saturdays, sometimes doing work. Sundays in the middle of the day, mornings I wake up late, Sundays nights I relax. I do work on Sundays, I do whatever I need to do. But right now I'm on pace where July and August, I'm gonna do nothing. That is gonna be my self-care. Because once September hits, I'm gonna be so hungry to take it to the next level, nothing is gonna stop me. But everybody's got to figure out what that point is and what they ultimately need to do. But it's essential. Any other questions that anyone has? Or I don't know if there's, were there more questions on the, okay, good. Oh, he is. Oh, this is a lot, oh, sorry.
So what's your work-life balance?
Damn it, now I got to tell you. What's my work-life balance? So I have flexibility in my schedule where I have gaps where I kind of like sit down and I find time to either relax or to not get stuff done, right? There's some times where if I have like for example, today I had a workshop in the morning. I got home and I had 2 hours before I had to come out here. And in those 2 hours, I could have sat down and done a bunch of work and whatever it is. I was watching Netflix and I was relaxing before I head out here. I took advantage of that. When I go home later, I got work to do. So I'm going to spend a couple of hours doing work. So everything depends. But the reality is that you determine what that looks like. If I have tomorrow where I have nothing scheduled, do I want to not do anything and relax? Do I want to spend half the day working, half the day not? You make that decision based on what needs to get accomplished, what needs to get done, and also how you're feeling. Because if you're like, if I'm at the point where I say to myself, man, it's been a tough week and I need to unplug, I'm not going to do anything tomorrow. I may pay for it the day after, but I'll take a day off. And so I constantly am making these decisions. Do I want to do work? Do I want to take off? Do I want to relax? Whatever it is. And ultimately, I'm always just kind of listening to myself in terms of how I feel and making that decision at that time.
Great. Just want to thank you, Richard. Let's give Richard a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
In person and also virtually. If you're virtually, put up your applause hand. So stay tuned for part 2, which is happening next month. So you can register on the same Zoom link that you registered for this event, for the next month event. And I just want to do a little infomercial about what Blackstone Launchpad is. They sponsored this event. Blackstone is a global investment firm, and they strongly believe in entrepreneurship, developing that entrepreneurship mindset. So at Queens College, we launched a program. Our campus director is Professor Luke Mares. And so if you're interested in the program, they have opportunities for students to be involved in pitch competition. Next month, a group of 4 Queens College students, they're going to the Silicon Valley in California for Startup Grind and also for TechCrunch. A lot of opportunities where they get to meet with entrepreneurs and network and learn about what are some of the opportunities that are out there, what are the newest trends. And so this opportunity is available to all Queens College students to be a part of Blackstone Launchpad. And the way you could register to be a part of Blackstone Launchpad is go to qc.startuptree.co. That's qc.startuptree.co. And we have our Blackstone Launchpad administrative assistant, Christian De Ocampo, who is on the Zoom call. And so he'll put that chat in the link as well. So once again, thank you so much, Richard. This was inspiring. I'm looking forward to part 2. And thank you all for coming out to the Career Center's first hybrid event. Want to also thank the other co-sponsors. We have Zaire Colette, who is the Student Association president, here with us today. We also have Saskia Van Horn, who is on the Zoom as well. She is the president of Alpha and also part of Student Association. And also Dr. Norca Blackman Richards, who is the SEEP director. So this is a collaborative event because we believe in you as Queens College students, and we're really here to support you.